Hello everyone and welcome back to the podcast. My view is that Palantir and Tesla are building a platform that promises to commoditize automation and thus redefine the American and global economy. Let's get deep into it. The predominant counter-argument to my long-term Palantir and Tesla thesis is that the hypothetical market caps a decade or two from now would be too high. I believe that Palantir has 100x long-term potential from here, and that Tesla is going to be worth tens of trillions of dollars. This means that I expect the two companies combined will be worth more than the entire US GDP today, which is just over $27 trillion. In the remainder of this write-up, I explain why the two companies are building a platform that's going to redefine the economy and, along the way, make it much bigger. The economy today consists of people processing information in order to figure out what action to take next. The end goal of each action is to maximize the conversion rate of raw and scarce materials into goods and services that can be sold at a profit. Over the past 2 decades, the economy has been accelerated by the onset of information technologies, which have brought the cost of sharing information down to zero. Still, at the end of the day, it's still humans taking decisions and then performing actions to create value. Humans have to eat and rest, which is ultimately a bottleneck for economic growth at present. Palantir and Tesla are laying the groundwork to exponentiate how much information the economy processes per second and at what rate it gets converted into value, non-linearly increasing humanity's ability to unlock value. The economy is now increasingly a combination of horizontal and vertical ontologies, the ontology grid going forward, whereby we are creating exhaustive digital copies of horizontal and vertical components of the economy. The ontology grid promises to commoditize intelligence as we have commoditized energy via electricity in the past century. In the graph below, you can see a simplified depiction of what the economy looks like when broken down into horizontal and vertical ontologies. In the graph that you see on the screen now, we have Tesla, which would take care of a number of horizontal ontologies, such as energy and autonomy, and then Palantir, which would run a number of vertical ontologies by essentially deploying digital twins at companies that perform specific functions in the economy. For instance, autonomy is a horizontal component because it applies to all sectors. Autonomy is how we translate the insights we derive from processing information into action in order to bend atoms. Once Tesla trains an AI to navigate three-dimensional space autonomously, that capability can be distributed via an API to any device on Earth at a marginal cost. However, in order for autonomy to be useful in specific use cases like construction and healthcare, the AI model in question has to be trained further on a specialized dataset. This is where Palantir's vertical ontologies come in. By providing customers across a growing range of industries with digital twins, Palantir is effectively creating exhaustive digital copies of industries. The digital twins thus contain the specialized data that would enable an autonomy AI to get good at performing surgeries, building houses, or even fighting on the battlefield. The ontology grid promises to automate any repeatable task. The ontology grid is forming a quote-unquote invisible encirclement around businesses which will be rapidly closing in on them. Much like the internet has disrupted industries by concentrating power into a few intermediaries, this infrastructure promises to gradually commoditize a growing volume of operations within businesses. This infrastructure will be collecting exponentially more data over time, making it increasingly harder for companies not running on this grid to stay competitive. We will see top-tier surgery become available to anyone on Earth for a fraction of the cost versus today, for example, and other goods and services become abundant and cheap. As you can see in the graph below, world GDP has gone from $1.36 trillion in 1960 to $105.44 trillion in 2023. That's a 77x increase in 6.5 decades. My thesis is that the ontology grid compresses the time for this increment to happen again to just a few decades, and that the key providers of this infrastructure exhibit a winner-takes-all scenario because the ontologies are driven by network effects. Indeed, once Tesla powers autonomy across the US, it can then do so across Europe, for example, and other continents at an increasingly marginal cost. The same applies to Palantir as it comes to sell valuable compute that's pre-tailored to operational needs per function and per industry. The numbers of this thesis are big, but fundamentally the logic is simple. Data is to the 21st century what electricity has been to the 20th century. The economy mostly consists of people processing information to then take decisions and perform fundamentally repetitive actions. The above infrastructure abstracts that away and enables humans to focus on increasingly creative endeavors, which makes the economy much bigger, as has happened in the past. For example, the printing press disrupted the monks and their roles as scribes, but it ultimately led to the Renaissance. I think we see the same happen on steroids going forward. There's no guarantee that Palantir and Tesla go on to evolve into key providers of the ontology grid, but the way to gauge the odds is assessing their respective proprietary data moats. As I teach students of my Tech Stock Goldmine course, which is linked to in the show's footnotes, the way to stay competitive in the AI economy is proprietary data, which ultimately enables you to train AI models that no one else can. Both Palantir and Tesla are building increasingly irreplaceable proprietary data machines that are currently pointing towards a winner-takes-all scenario. Palantir and Tesla are currently years ahead of the competition, and with every quarter that goes by, their operations get increasingly harder to replicate. Tesla has millions of cars, which are actually robots, on the road, picking up data and learning to navigate three-dimensional space. Palantir is exponentiating its pace of distribution via AIP, installing its digital twins in an exponentially growing number of private companies. For these two companies to not become the key providers of the ontology grid, someone has to overtake them in their respective operations today, and at present, this seems highly unlikely. Tesla only has to sell between 1 and 2 million robots per year to grow into a $10 trillion market cap business without taking the transportation business into account. If Palantir manages to acquire 100 times more commercial customers than at present, provide 10 times more value, and at a fraction of the cost to each customer, that alone makes it a multi-trillion-dollar company on the conservative end of things. Both scenarios are actually fairly realistic for the two companies, and that wouldn't be the end-all for them. As evidenced by my recent Netflix deep dive, winners tend to drastically exceed expectations over time. Netflix is up over 700x since IPO by simply focusing on providing better entertainment to more people and at an affordable cost. This operational algorithm has yielded exceptional results to date, but as I explain in my deep dive, this is only the beginning for them. Hundreds of millions of households around the planet are not on Netflix at present, which means that over the long term, they still have well over a 10x runway from here. As they continue to make their way into video games and other means of distributing their IP, intellectual property, they can increase ARPU, average revenue per user, non-linearly over the coming decade, on top of adding a lot more users to the platform. This affords them an even bigger runway, and I believe that a decade from now, folks will once again look back in awe of the company's and stock's performance. Fundamentally, the main driver of Netflix's performance is that it has exceptional organizational properties that it channels into a single task, delighting end consumers. This is one of the main concepts that I teach in my Tech Stock Goldmine course, that organizations that are more obsessed with their end customers than are their competitors tend to outperform over time. So long as Palantir's and Tesla's respective cultures remain top-notch, the above scenarios will likely be only the beginning for these two companies. Tesla will likely go on to sell way more humanoid robots than just a few million per year, and Palantir will probably come to power any organization in the West, thus presenting far more potential upside over the coming decades than folks could reasonably believe at present. So this is how I'm thinking about these two companies long term. This may not actually work. There's risk in the thesis, nothing is guaranteed. But for now, this has translated into very handsome returns for my Palantir investment. It's up over 10x. And last year, everyone capitulated on Tesla stock. And I've been holding this company since 2016. And the reason that I didn't sell myself is that I'm thinking long term. I'm thinking decades out. I'm focused on the fundamentals. And so thus far, this kind of thinking that I exposed in this video is working very well. and I believe that it will continue to work very well over the coming decades. Okay, so that's it for today. If you enjoyed this video, can I please ask you to share this with one friend? Also hit the like button, subscribe, comment, everything. These deep dives are for free, and so the only way this grows is with your help. So if we can help push the algorithm, or if we can encourage the algorithm to push these videos, that would be of tremendous help. So thank you very much, take care, and until next time.